Like some of the other albums that you'll see in season 2, there's this kind of fear, and it's this story about this populist fear of the unknown, and Bowie's kind of vision for how that plays out. And is it theatrical? Absolutely. Is it over the top? Yep.
Only Bowie.
But
what if I told you I had all the answers for marketing in 2025? Some of you'd probably pay me $1 million. Well, surprise, surprise, I don't. But some of the guests on season 2 just might. But buckle up, folks, we're in for a voyage as we jump on the rocket ship known as David Bowie as we visit the timeless masterpiece, the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. All right, team, we've officially crossed the threshold into 2025. Hard to believe that we're here. But we're going to take some time today reflecting just lightly on the past, but more importantly, looking forward. I've had this imaginary crystal ball sitting in front of us throughout the filming of season 2. Our guests appeared into it. Out of came some pretty interesting responses. But we ourselves have some things that we'd like to share with the audience in preparation for 2025. What does business development, what does strategy look like? What does marketing look like? What does revenue operations look like into 2025? So get ready for an op-ed piece on what Leadpages leaders think about the future. So, Michael, I'd love to start from your chair as an executive, more specifically in MarTech. What are you preparing people for, and what are you hearing from your peer set?
yeah, well, we've come through an interesting time here. 2023, we saw kind of a reverse in the industry in terms of funding, right? All of a sudden, companies were expected to have margin. And we come out of this very frothy period where you get a lot of kind of junk. Right? Companies that were funded, but maybe they shouldn't have been. 2023 was a correction year and into 2024. So I think what we're going to start to see in 2025 is those companies that were able to survive and come out of it, they're going to start to become market leaders. And they were the ones that were able to move through this really tough period. And what you usually see out of periods like this are some really strong winners starting to make a dent in the market. So I think we're gonna see more players and more brand names that maybe we haven't seen before start to compete with the incumbent brands and the people that have commanded that space for a long time. I think that's much of what we've been preparing for too, is knowing that we can't stay stagnant. We have to keep moving forward. And that's where internally our 2025 is much about innovation. But I think we're going to see it in the market as well, whereas those winners are going to command a greater market share by the end of 2025.
Yeah, the footsteps are getting louder, are they not? Right? Like we talk often at the leadership level about competitors we don't know or see today, likely competing with us in short order. You hear of app development happening in a weekend, product development in a weekend with just a few, intelligent, devs just kind of grinding over it. So, I mean, it's time to speed up, to innovate at a rate maybe we hadn't in some time. So, love that insight. Stace, from your desk, what are you seeing into 2025 in the way of revenue operations and just business as a whole?
Yeah, so I think in the last couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of data, just data from here, trying to collect as much data as possible. And then last year, especially, I think it's like, okay, we have all this data. What's it say? Like, can we organize it? Like, what are we doing with this? Like, let's do something. So I think now we've gone through that. We have the data, we've organized it, and now 2025 is going to be a lot about now someone go do something with it, make it actionable, and then having someone own it. So not just here team, here's all these reports and all these graphs, like see ya in 2026. Like no, like, all right, Ryan, here's this graph, here's this set of data, go change it or whatnot. So it's really having ownership now over the data. I also think it's going to become even more important, as we've said earlier in earlier episodes, that consumer behavior, purchasing behavior is changing so much. And so having that data on it is going to be even now more important, because all of our assumptions that we've had are thrown out the door. People are buying more on TikTok and they're buying more on these other platforms that we don't even know about yet. And so the only thing that really tells us that is data.
Yeah, and I think people around your chair, it's like the distillation of all this mass information, these massive data sets, getting it down to something that's actionable, right? I think we all stare at massive dashboards of which sometimes we go, boy, where do we start? Where do we go from here? So I think your chair, it's that continued distillation. And something I always talk about with my team is just simplifying the complex. We're human beings. We still need to be able to consume information quickly and then act upon it accordingly too. So I think that's a little bit of what you're speaking about as well. From my vantage point, we've talked about diversification, going places others are not, or trying to be there at least. I see the expansion of influencer marketing really taking a step forward. It's been a hot topic for a few years, and for folks like me who've entertained the thought of it, the barrier to entry to do it well was pretty substantial, right? To get connected with these folks that have 500,000 or 1 million subscribers, you'd be surprised if you haven't did your homework yet what it takes to engage in a relationship with these people. Now, what I'm finding with some advanced discussions with some partners, there's different pathways into influencer marketing. It's these very connected experiences with people of influence, right? We always want to expedite the sales process. What's the best way of doing so? Finding people that are already liked and trusted by a community. Now, if I can integrate myself into that conversation, sales and trial to pay conversion rates all take a step forward in a very meaningful way. So I think that the marketer today is going to try to find these connected audiences through maybe platforms that offer a community of influencers as opposed to these one-to-one relationships, which you look at the rate card and go, holy cow, I'm not sure that I see my rate of return here. I think there's a lower barrier to entry for influencer marketing for marketing teams of all sizes. So I see that as a great extension of this diversification of performance marketing and such. And I'm hopeful that many get to experience that because I think there's some great resellers of our products and services that some of us are just not benefiting from today. And I think most of us are not, quite honestly. So, yeah. We've heard a little bit from our guests, and we'll have some snippets shared throughout this episode, of course, but a lot of the themes still sound a lot like 2024. AI this, AI that, right? It's coming fast, it's here to stay. Well, yeah, no kidding, it is. But its impact is a little bit different on the end user and maybe people at the leadership level. And Mike, I'd like to just ask you quickly, AI, is it different than 2024? Is it changing or is it much of the same?
Well, I think in 2024, it was going to ruin humanity, right? I think that was much of the conversation. Was this all? It was kind of the end game, and I think people maybe were trying to figure out what is the end game for this. I think what we're hearing now is, look, this is going to accelerate. This is obviously relevant to everything that we do, but we're seeing more specific use cases. So it's less about needing basic income because there's going to be no jobs, and it's more about how does this augment human work. And I think that's what some of the themes that we've heard from our guests are. I'm starting to use this internally. I don't quite know, but hey, we're saving time. And I think that's where it starts. And I think that's where we begin 2025 is businesses figuring out, how do I start to use this? What does the end of 2025 look like? Well, I mean, Thomas said, it's going to accelerate much faster than we think, and we may end up somewhere that we can't imagine today. I think what we've seen is while things move quickly, and even the development has moved increasingly faster year after year, the adoption is always a little bit slower than we anticipate. So I would guess we'd see similar trajectory where maybe the capabilities are going to impact us or be there in an outsized way, but the actual use cases and adoption might be a little bit slower than we think.
Yeah, no, I like that. Stace.
Yeah, I think 2024 we actually benefited from AI being such a buzzword.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we didn't.
Well, yeah. If I had a dime for every time, this is powered by AI, you're like, really? But because it was so, I think, hyped and overused, the average person was like, okay, I guess I could start using it. It wasn't such this, oh my gosh, what is this? It's more of like everyone's talking about it. Apparently I'm using it in this, this, and this. Like it became more approachable and maybe more like, oh, I can use it. Oh, I'm already using it, that sort of thing. So I think now that we've kind of like climbed that hill over of like, okay, we're doing it. Now it's like, all right, now let's actually start to intentionally use it and like get after it.
Yeah, no, I like it. I'm going to stand on the edge of controversy because I think that's where the marketing is always at its best. But I think that we're seeing a wave of the ethics police coming towards AI at this point in time. We talk about deepfake technology and how it's going to allow us to personalize experiences at scale, right? I can train a version of me to talk like me and represent itself in a million different ways. Wild stuff with crazy ramifications, right? Marketers are like, that's exciting, but we know there are people that are going to weaponize this technology in a way of which it could harm individuals and it could harm businesses and brands that have had long-standing reputations. I do see us kind of getting closer to that, holy cow, what's real, what's fake, right? Where we talk about it during the political season, like, my goodness, you could have someone saying something that they clearly did not, but
we actually saw that happen.
Yeah, and it comes off as like, well, that's what he or she said.
Right.
Oh my goodness, now they have to have this whole discussion around what was real, what was fake. And we know in a headline world, people grab what they see quickly, make a kind of an assumption or decision. That's it, and they believe it. That gets to be dangerous in a variety of ways for me. So I think how we police ourselves, hopefully we as humans still prove out to do the right things, both to advance our society forward, but also to not harm, the great technology that's advanced us. And if we get a little bit further, is just, what it takes, the power consumption around the AI sphere. I mean, every time that we prompt into GPT, I think I read it's like a bottle of water of power is used to generate that outcome. Now you start doing that at scale, and a lot of us use GPT or AI image generation for funsies, right? Imagine you do that, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times. The impact is now showing up in the way of, is it profitable? Can we have server farms really processing this information at scale? And OpenAI is trying to go for profit, right? And that starts to open up a different, funding and yada, yada, yada. But I'm wondering, is there like, holy cow, it's great usage, but are we able to really for profit what this is doing for us? So I think ethics and morality are going to find its way to this, but they're also just basic economics as well. I think we have to find a way to profitability. We can't just do what we're doing for free because we're getting away with quite a bit right now. So.
Right, and tech is really good.
It's great
at that. But yeah, I think it'll be nice. Checks and balances are always a healthy ecosystem, and hopefully it'll start to catch up.
That's the thought, yes. Yeah. I did do a flip-flop. I wanted to reserve the musical influence for today's discussion as well, because we often started season 2 with, here's the music, and it ends to informing the kind of the marketing topic. But today, the choice was so obvious for us, I think, and Michael, you made the selection of this, so kudos to you. But we're staring down the eyes of David Bowie's introduction of Ziggy Stardust. And the record, I love this, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and The Spiders from Mars. Love this. Very futuristic. It seemingly has aged very well. But I want to talk about its application to the discussion, Michael. Maybe some of the things that Bowie saw well before his time had come, and maybe its application again to the conversation.
Well, again, like some of the other albums that you'll see in season 2, there's this kind of fear, and it's this story about this populist fear of the unknown, and Bowie's kind of vision for how that plays out. And is it theatrical? Absolutely. Is it over the top? Yep.
Only Bowie.
But the kind of theme of the unknown, of this entity coming, of humanity as a whole being scared of the uncertain, feels very much like the times that we're living in today. And I think we all want to know, what does the end of 2025 look like? What is the end of 2026? What do we want to know today that we're going to know tomorrow? And that theme, beyond kind of the hero element of it, is very prevalent, especially in the first half of the album.
Couldn't agree. What'd you say, Mrs. Claus?
Well, I actually read that there was thoughts to make it a musical.
Ooh, it would do well.
Yeah,
I mean, as you're talking, this the fantasy of it, all of that. I'm like, that musical would be nuts.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
But the album in itself, though, I think a standout track for me was the classic, the Starman.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a
I think everyone has heard it, even I've heard it. And so it's just one of those that you can, I don't quite know that, you know the song. Yeah. You just know it, whether you know the story behind it and all of that and the potential musical, you know the song.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple that stand out for me. Starman, like you said, it's widely known. Suffragette City is the song that's probably most popularly known. It was a pop record amongst a concept record, which I think is always interesting. A lot of these concept projects rarely yield a single that becomes commercially viable. Of course, only Bowie could probably accomplish it, but I'm sure there's a great story that I have not fully dissected inside of Suffragette City as how it applies to Ziggy, but I thought that was a record that we're all very familiar with. I personally love Soul Love.
Inspirations have I none, just a touch of flaming dove. All I have is my love of love, and love is not loving.
Which I can't remember where it falls on the record, but it has this incredible drum break to open it up. And as a hip-hop adorer, I was like, man, that drum break's been used. And I'm trying to pinpoint where it's been used so many times because Bowie was always so great at having these really intricate percussion performances that made the rest of the music just jump off of the canvas. He had a really interesting way of how he played a guitar, but I think it was best aided by the drums and the percussion. And Soul Love, for me, it caught my attention, and it still does to this date. It's hard not to love just this futuristic voyage that he takes you on as well, right? It's hard to call attention to a singular track when you see a concept record that is so cohesive front to back. And we've talked about a couple of records today. It's like, holy cow, this is just, track one through track whatever, it makes sense together. This is another great example, and kind of for me, a 5-star performance across the board. And it feels today, it feels yesterday, and it maybe feels tomorrow as well, which, you accomplish those three. What's left to do, maybe, and maybe Bowie feels the same, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think what we're hoping to touch on is kind of this element of hope. And, the hope comes through Ziggy Stardust, through but how I think we're all looking for that thread in what does the future look like. Because a lot of the stories that we're hearing are quite bleak, but I don't think the future is as bleak as we may be led to believe.
I love that, and that is how we will end today's episode.
All right.